Ukraine, for the first time, has admitted that Russia's military has crossed into the eastern industrial region of Dnipropetrovsk. Russia has, of course, made this claim throughout the summer that it has entered the area.
The war in Ukraine has once again shifted its landscape. For the first time, Ukrainian officials have admitted that Russian troops have managed to cross into the key eastern region of Dnipropetrovsk, a region long considered one of the most crucial industrial hubs of Ukraine. This development comes at a time of ongoing battles in Donetsk, diplomatic struggles across the Atlantic, and stalled peace initiatives. The entry into Dnipropetrovsk is more than just a territorial move. It's a psychological marker in a conflict that has stretched across years. It signals shifting pressure points, raises new concerns for Ukraine's defenses, and leaves the world watching closely to see whether this is the start of a broader escalation or a temporary push. So, what does this latest advance mean for Ukraine, for Russia, and for the broader quest to bring this devastating conflict to an end? Let's explore the story in depth. The first major Russian push into Dnipropetrovsk, the confirmation that Russian forces have managed to enter Dnipropetrovsk, marks a significant moment in the ongoing conflict. Ukrainian commanders have long maintained strong defensive lines in this industrial region, and until recently, Russia's progress was largely limited to neighboring areas such as Donetsk and Luhansk. Viktor Trehubov, a representative of the Dnipro Operational Strategic Group of Troops, told the BBC that this is the first attack of such a large scale in the Dnipropetrovsk region. His words underscore the seriousness of the incursion, though he also clarified that Ukraine's military had managed to stop the advance before Russian troops could secure deeper control. While Russia's defense ministry released images claiming to show its soldiers standing in the village of Zaporizhzhia, Ukraine's armed forces quickly countered that they still hold the area. Similar claims and counterclaims have become a recurring feature of the war, yet the symbolic importance of even limited gains in this region cannot be overlooked. This first breach signals that Russia is intent on testing the resilience of Ukraine's defenses beyond previously targeted fronts, possibly reshaping future phases of the conflict. The strategic importance of Dnipropetrovsk. Dnipropetrovsk is not just another region on the map. With a pre-war population of more than 3 million, it was Ukraine's second most important hub of heavy industry after the Donbass. Its regional capital, Dnipro, has been both an industrial powerhouse and a strategic logistical center. If Russian forces were to secure even partial control here, it would represent a significant shift in momentum. Unlike Donetsk or Luhansk, Moscow has not formally laid claim to Dnipropetrovsk as part of its annexation efforts. Yet, by pushing into this territory, Russia signals both its military persistence and its ability to test Ukraine's defenses in new areas. Attacks on Dnipropetrovsk's infrastructure have been frequent, with overnight strikes often targeting energy facilities. Neighboring regions like Poltava have also felt the ripple effects, underscoring how this conflict extends far beyond the trench lines into Ukraine's broader civilian and economic landscape. For Ukraine, holding Dnipropetrovsk is not only about defending territory but also about safeguarding critical industries that remain vital to its economy and war effort. Conflicting reports and the fog of war. The situation on the ground remains highly fluid. The Ukrainian Deep State Mapping Project assessed earlier this week that Russia had occupied two small villages, Zaporizhzhia and Novorohorivka, just inside the Dnipropetrovsk region. However, Ukraine's general staff quickly rejected these claims, insisting that their forces continue to control Zaporizhzhia and that active hostilities remain ongoing around Novorohorivka. This back and forth highlights the fog of war, the uncertainty that surrounds reports from the front lines. Both sides have vested interest in shaping the narrative. Russia to project strength and momentum, Ukraine to reassure its citizens and allies that defenses remain intact. The truth, as often is the case in war, likely lies somewhere between. Russian troops may have established a presence in some contested areas, but whether they can hold and expand those positions remains uncertain. For observers abroad, these conflicting accounts reveal how difficult it can be to interpret battlefield updates in real time, making independent verification an essential but often challenging task. Adding to the complexity, modern warfare is not only fought with artillery and infantry, but also with information campaigns. Satellite images, social media footage, and official statements often appear contradictory, creating a battlefield where perception matters almost as much as physical territory. Both Kyiv and Moscow understand that controlling the narrative has immense influence on international opinion, on domestic morale, and even on the confidence of soldiers in the field. This makes the fog of war not merely a byproduct of confusion, but a deliberate element of strategy in itself. A timeline of Russian advances. Russia has been hinting at an offensive into Dnipropetrovsk since early June. Officials in Moscow had claimed then that operations were underway, yet weeks passed without visible progress. This summer, however, Russian forces managed to achieve modest but costly gains in Donetsk, where heavy fighting continues. Earlier this month, a small Russian infantry group made a sudden 10-kilometer push beyond Ukraine's defensive lines near Dobropilya, creating concern that deeper advances might follow. But Ukrainian forces appear to have halted that momentum. The entry into Dnipropetrovsk, therefore, may represent another attempt to test weak points in Ukraine's defenses, while keeping pressure on multiple fronts. Maps of the conflict from mid-May through late August show gradual shifts in territorial control, particularly along the border between Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk. Though these changes may look small in scale, they carry significant symbolic and strategic weight. They demonstrate Russia's willingness to pursue incremental territorial gains despite high costs, and Ukraine's determination to absorb these pressures while holding critical defensive lines. The wider diplomatic landscape. As these developments unfold on the battlefield, efforts to secure a diplomatic breakthrough appear to be stalling. Earlier this summer, former U.S. President Donald Trump met Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, followed by talks with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky in Washington. Hopes briefly rose that these exchanges might pave the way for a summit between the two warring leaders. Yet, by late August, momentum had faded. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said plainly that the agenda for a summit is not ready at all, dismissing suggestions of imminent talks. He further stressed that discussions about Ukraine's security guarantees without Russian involvement would be pointless, reflecting Moscow's long-standing insistence on being central to any negotiations. On the Ukrainian side, President Zelensky continues to push Western allies to intensify their efforts in securing lasting security arrangements. His meetings with leaders such as UK Military Chief Admiral Sir Tony Radakin and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz demonstrate Kyiv's focus on future guarantees as much as immediate support. Still, the lack of clarity over summit conditions reflects how difficult it remains to align positions, with each side holding fundamentally different visions for what peace might look like. International warnings against concessions. The question of territorial concessions remains one of the most sensitive issues in this war. Reports emerged that Putin suggested to Trump he would be willing to end hostilities if Ukraine ceded control over the remaining parts of Donetsk still held by Kyiv. But European leaders have warned strongly against such a move. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas described it as a trap, arguing that Russia has not made one single concession throughout the conflict. Her words echo the sentiment of many in Ukraine who believe any compromise risks encouraging further aggression. Kol Pavlo Palisa, deputy head of the Ukrainian presidential office, also cautioned earlier this year that the Kremlin's ambitions extend far beyond Donetsk, with the ultimate goal of controlling all Ukrainian territory east of the Dnipro River. Such statements underline why Ukrainian officials are hesitant to view concessions as a path to real peace. For Kyiv's allies, these warnings reinforce the argument that short-term concessions could undermine long-term security, leaving Ukraine exposed to renewed conflict in the future. Domestic shifts inside Ukraine. Beyond the battlefield and the diplomatic halls, Ukraine is also adapting domestically. In a significant move, the government recently eased restrictions on men aged 18 to 22, allowing them to travel abroad without requiring the authorization that applies to men up to age 60. Prime Minister Yulia Svyridenko explained the reasoning, saying, "We want Ukrainians to maintain their links with Ukraine as much as possible. Many families have been sending sons abroad before they reach military age, and this policy shift recognizes both the demographic realities and the need to keep ties strong with millions of Ukrainians already living abroad." Estimates suggest that 5.6 million Ukrainian men are currently outside the country, while those under 25 remain exempt from conscription. The adjustment to travel rules reflects how the state is managing its human resources amid prolonged conflict. It also highlights the balancing act of maintaining military readiness while preventing further societal fractures, ensuring that younger generations remain connected to the nation, even if temporarily abroad. The human dimension of war. While military strategies and diplomatic negotiations dominate headlines, the human dimension of this conflict continues to unfold in countless towns and villages. Residents of contested areas face daily uncertainty, caught between shifting lines of control, targeted strikes on infrastructure, and the emotional weight of displacement. International media have captured scenes of evacuations, like those in Dobropilya, where families rushed to leave as bombs fell. For many Ukrainians, the war has become not just a geopolitical struggle, but a deeply personal one, shaping choices about whether to stay, fight, leave, or return. This human story is critical to understanding why developments in places like Dnipropetrovsk matter. Beyond maps and military assessments, these incursions affect real communities and real lives. The trauma of repeated displacement, the strain on resources, and the resilience shown by ordinary citizens all add depth to a conflict too often viewed only through the lens of strategy and power. What comes next? The entry of Russian troops into Dnipropetrovsk, whether limited or temporary, raises pressing questions about the trajectory of the war. Will Russia attempt a larger push deeper into the region? Or is this more of a probing action to stretch Ukrainian defenses? Can Ukraine continue to hold the line while also preparing for the long-term security guarantees it seeks from its Western partners? The answers remain uncertain. What is clear, however, is that the war is far from over. Each new front, each contested village, and each diplomatic meeting adds another layer to a conflict that has already reshaped the political and security landscape of Europe. For now, Dnipropetrovsk stands as both a symbol of Ukraine's resilience and a reminder of the shifting dynamics that make this war so unpredictable. The next steps will depend not only on military action, but also on the success or failure of global diplomacy in finding a viable path forward. The situation in Dnipropetrovsk highlights just how fluid and complex this war remains. Limited advances can carry outsized importance, both for morale and for strategy. As Ukraine braces for what may come next, and as diplomatic channels continue to struggle, the world watches closely. If you found this deep dive helpful and want to stay updated, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your engagement helps us bring you more detailed analysis of global events that shape our future.